The man merely tripped and fell, yet before his eyes appeared a game interface where all options were functional except the exit game button, which remained unclickable. This made Shiro realize he was trapped in the game world. It turned out the newly released DLC for Elder Tale had caused countless players to become stuck in the game. Knowing staying idle wouldn't help, Shiro contacted his old friend through the friend list. Their reunion after years happened under such unexpected circumstances. Naotsugu hadn't played the game for 2 years but logged back in after hearing about the update, only to find himself trapped as well. Everything around them matched the game perfectly. Even the tactile sensations felt incredibly real, confirming this wasn't a dream. The two decided to gather information about this world together. Though their inventory and skills remained usable, Shiro insisted they avoid leaving town temporarily due to the unknown penalties for death. During their conversation, a rock fell from above, revealing Akatsuki, an assassin they had once partied with. To fit the cold, aloof image of an assassin, Akatsuki had chosen a tall male avatar, but the update made movement extremely cumbersome. She resolved to buy a character appearance change item from Shiro. After calm returned, a cute girl appeared before them. Grateful for Shiro saving her from distress, Akatsuki pledged loyalty as his master and swore to protect him at all costs. With a max-level assassin joining their party, their survival odds improved significantly. The next day, the three arrived in town and noticed the number of NPCs had increased. They were called the People of the Land, while the trapped players were referred to as adventurers. Seeing the variety of fruits and food, they suddenly remembered they hadn't eaten anything since arriving in the game world. Akatsuki had already bought her favorite dessert. Though the food looked delicious, it all tasted like plastic. Just then, a player contacted Shiro. Marie, the guildmaster of Crescent Moon Alliance, invited him to exchange game information. Upon entering the guild hall, everyone was impressed by Marie's unique perspective. Marie immediately rushed into Shiro's arms, her fiery personality fitting her role as a healer. After a brief conversation, Shiro learned about the current state of the game. The teleportation gates between cities had failed, causing many players to join large guilds. Due to the game update, monsters and quests were now completely different. Marie hoped Shiro would join her team, as the outside world was unstable, and having more allies meant greater security. However, Shiro, having been betrayed in a guild before, declined her offer. After everyone left, Shiro observed the bewildered players on the streets and decided to check the situation outside the beginner village at night. But as soon as they stepped out, they encountered a group of level 20 squirrels. Despite being level 90 players, they had just arrived in this game world and didn't know how to use their skills. Thus, the absurd scene of low-level monsters chasing max-level players unfolded. During the struggle, Akatsuki accidentally unleashed a powerful skill. Though she didn't know how it happened, Shiro seemed to suddenly understand. By locking onto a target and combining physical movement with incantations, skills could be activated. Due to a game update, hundreds of thousands of players were transported into the game world called Elder Tale. Unlike games where death in the game also means death in reality, in this world, each death results in respawning at a revival point, but at the cost of losing a portion of real-world memories. If a player dies a certain number of times, they will completely transform into a native inhabitant of the game. After several days of testing, Shiro and the others mastered the combat methods in this world. On their way back, Shiro noticed someone following them. At this point, Akatsuki suggested that she act as a scout ahead while also practicing her proficiency as a tracker. The tracker is one type of subclass in the world of Elder Tale. In addition to having a main class, players can also train in other subclasses. Each subclass has corresponding skills, such as the stealth movement Akatsuki was using at that moment. After the group separated, Shiro wore a worried expression due to the security issues Marie had mentioned. Although combat between adventurers is prohibited within cities, some players still engage in player killing in the wild to steal others' items and belongings. Since maps cannot be used outside the city now, the success rate of ambushes has greatly increased, and player killing in the wild has become increasingly common. Just as they arrived at the Healing Institute, Naotsugu suddenly fell into a magic trap. Although Shiro immediately freed him from the restraint, players who made a living through player killing in the wild also targeted them. Both sides instantly entered combat. Shiro first used a skill to lock onto their vision, and after confirming the enemy's positions, Naotsugu engaged in battle at the front. The enemies recognized Shiro as the core of the team and sent an assassin to ambush him. However, this was exactly what Shiro had anticipated. He used a mental bind to immobilize the assassin, while Naotsugu, following orders, activated a skill to briefly draw the aggro of surrounding enemies onto himself. As Naotsugu's HP continued to drop, the opponents believed they had secured victory. Unexpectedly, Shiro first cast a skill to immobilize them, then hypnotized their healer. Meanwhile, the hidden enemy was eliminated by Akatsuki. After a desperate and ugly struggle, Akatsuki decisively finished him off. Shiro realized that a world without rules only became more chaotic. At that moment, Marie called for backup, explaining that members of their guild were being bullied by local players in the northern city. Since the teleportation function was now disabled, she decided to lead a team to rescue them and asked Shiro to handle guild affairs in the meantime. Shiro hesitated again, as he truly wanted no further ties with the guild, and Marie's strength wasn't enough to escape unscathed. After discussion, Shiro decided to head to the northern city for the rescue mission. This is a player organization revered as legendary in the gaming world. Although the actual number of members is only 20, they conquered the most challenging monster dungeons through their exceptional operational skills. Shiro was once the supreme commander of this team. After agreeing to Marie's request for rescue, Shiro blew the beast summoning flute, and 2 griffins appeared before Akatsuki. She recognized these as rare items obtainable only by clearing high-difficulty dungeons. At Shiro's invitation, Akatsuki rode a flying mount for the first time. Soon after, the 3 embarked on a journey to the northern city. However, the distance was too vast, and with griffin mounts capable of flying only 4 hours per day, Shiro decided to take an underground tunnel to cross the strait. The scenery here was completely different from what they had seen on screens. The sensation of stepping onto ancient mine tracks made the 3 shudder with unease. Just then, countless monsters blocked their path. To avoid wasting time, Shiro and the others were forced to take an old, abandoned road. The group rested in a safe zone, eating tasteless food. Ever since being transported into the game world, any system provided pre-made meals tasted like wax to them. Only seasonings and fruits retained their original flavors. Suddenly, Marie contacted Shiro, revealing that she had already made contact with the rescue target. Under the protection of kind strangers, Sirara was currently safe. It turned out she had been hiding in someone else's house all this time. Unable to go outside, she passed the days by doing household chores, which also leveled up her subclass. The town they were in had a bully guild that not only targeted adventurers but also enslaved NPCs, and Sirara had caught the attention of its leader. Meanwhile, after resting, the Shiro team resumed their journey through the tunnel. As they reached the middle of a bridge, it suddenly collapsed, and Shiro fell from the bridge into the riverbed. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, memories of past in-game events began to surface. Due to his exceptional analytical and command abilities, Shiro gradually came to be known as the Supreme Commander. However, no one treated him as a friend, only as a tool for clearing dungeons. This prolonged exploitation caused Shiro to completely lose sight of his original purpose for playing the game. It wasn't until he encountered Debauchery Tea Party that he slowly rediscovered the true meaning of gaming. Just as he was lost in these memories, Akatsuki's voice snapped him back to reality. It turned out that when he fell into the water, Akatsuki had promptly dived in to rescue him. After confirming his health, the group continued their journey. Unexpectedly, a giant monster blocked the exit. Shiro immediately issued a combat order. Naotsugu used a skill to draw the monster's aggro, while Akatsuki seized the opportunity to deal damage. With Shiro's crucial control skills added to the mix, the trio gradually whittled down the monster's HP. Seizing the perfect moment, Shiro cast Mental Shock on the monster, a skill that reduces enemy attributes while boosting allies' attacks. With this massive buff enhancement, Akatsuki cleaved the monster in half with a single strike. Upon exiting the tunnel, they were greeted by a breathtaking sight they had never seen before. Meanwhile, at the very location Shiro was heading to for the rescue, a man named Demiquaz had taken control of the area through force. Relying on their guild's numerical advantage, they ruthlessly exploited local players. If anyone resisted, they would repeatedly kill that player. The target of this rescue mission, Sirara, was fortunate to have received help, allowing her to temporarily escape Demiquis's pursuit. But could Shiro successfully rescue her? After several days of travel, the group finally reached the outskirts of the northern city, which was now entirely under Demiquis's rule. To avoid ambushes in the wild, Shiro decided to enter the city first and had Akatsuki conduct preliminary reconnaissance. Soon after, the group entered the city directly. However, the expected siege did not occur. Instead, an eerie atmosphere permeated the streets. To retrieve Sarara as quickly as possible, Shiro had no choice but to set aside these doubts. After successfully reuniting, Shiro was surprised to discover that the rescuer was his former teammate Nyanta. After a few minutes of small talk, Nyanta learned of Shiro's purpose for coming and immediately agreed to return to Akihabara with him. No sooner had the words been spoken than Akatsuki alerted Shiro that his location had been exposed. Seeing Sarara's terrified expression, Shiro decisively initiated the escape plan. However, the enemy's informants were spread throughout the city, and they were quickly spotted. That said, PK was prohibited within the city walls, so the group fearlessly walked out of the city. As expected, Demiquis had been waiting on their path for a long time. To prevent the enemy from ganging up on them immediately, through Shiro's deliberate provocation and guidance, a one-on-one duel between Demiquis and Nyanta was arranged. The battle between the two was on the verge of breaking out. Demiquis's class was Fighter. In the game, all skills were designed with cast animations and cooldown times, and the Fighter class was one with particularly short cooldowns. The ability to chain skills for extended periods was its unique advantage. A relentless barrage of skills took away most of Nyanta's HP. Yet at this moment, Nyanta remained completely calm. His class was Swashbuckler, one of the few that could dual wield. Each of his attacks could deal damage with various additional effects. The reason Nyanta had passively endured the beating earlier was purely to trade HP for stacking buffs. Seeing that victory was hopeless, Demiquis immediately ordered an all-out attack. Naotsugu rushed out from the side, using a skill to draw aggro, but the healer still restored Demiquis's HP, putting Nyanta at a disadvantage once again. Seeing this, Sarara also cast a heal on Nyanta, but because her level was too low, the HP restored was almost negligible. At this very moment, Naotsugu unleashed his ultimate trump card, Fortress of Stone, granting him 10 seconds of invincibility. Shiro also revealed a wicked grin. Just as Demiquis lunged at Nyanta, he was suddenly ensnared by Thorn Bind. Combined with Nyanta's consecutive thrusts, Demiquis's HP was instantly depleted. Meanwhile, the mage in the backline was taken out by Akatsuki. Witnessing Demiquis's instantaneous defeat, Akatsuki was stunned. Even the most powerful assassin couldn't achieve such a feat. Even if Thornbind could amplify damage, Nyanta's attacks alone shouldn't have been enough to one-shot a fighter. There was only one possible explanation. Thornbind lasted for 15 seconds, and the attack was timed to land at the very last moment of the skill's duration. Shiro then immediately reapplied another control skill the instant the first one broke, resulting in double the damage. But could such precise coordination truly exist? At this point, Demiquis's subordinates began surrendering one after another. Yet Demiquis himself refused to give up. At the critical moment, Sarara intervened, knocking him back to the respawn point with a single strike. With the matter resolved, the group summoned their griffins and began their return journey. Thanks to these flying mounts, Shiro and the others directly crossed the strait, temporarily evading Demiquis's pursuit. As the sky grew dark, the group decided to find a place to rest. Though the food laid out before them was varied, it all tasted like plastic when eaten. Just as they were resigning themselves to this, a delicious aroma wafted over. Only then did they notice Nyanta grilling meat. Skeptical but curious, they each took a bite. To their astonishment, the grilled meat tasted exactly like it would in the real world. Nyanta then stepped forward to explain. In this world, it was still possible to eat food that tasted like reality, but only under two conditions. First, the food had to be prepared by hand. Second, the cook needed to have the chef subclass at max level. As it happened, Nyanta's subclass was chef, and it was already maxed out. Ever since arriving in this world, every meal had felt like swallowing glass nearly unbearable. Now, faced with such exquisite flavor, Naotsugu almost ate himself to the point of bursting. The next day, the group set out on their journey home again. To conceal their tracks and evade pursuit, Shiro arrived at a farm managed by NPCs, who warmly welcomed him and his companions, eagerly preparing accommodations for everyone. Soon, they began chatting casually. Listening to the NPCs recount their tearful and bloodstained experiences, Shiro started to realize that even in this otherworldly realm, NPCs might experience birth, aging, sickness, and death. Each of them had their own unique storylines, making them feel like the native inhabitants of this world. In contrast, players like them were probably seen as the outsiders, possessing overwhelming combat abilities and the capacity to resurrect after death. Watching a pair of NPC siblings playfully roughhousing before him, Shiro fell into deep thought. Back when he used to play games, he had encountered a pair of novice siblings. Seeing how fully they immersed themselves in the joy of gaming, Shiro couldn't help but form a mentor-disciple relationship with them and spent some time guiding them. However, after the catastrophe, they too were dragged into the exploitation of their guild. Now, they were not only forced to hand over items daily, but also assigned various monster hunting tasks. During one such mission, due to the vast level gap between the guild leader and the other members, all the monsters focused their aggression on the leader, causing the formation to collapse. Several teammates died as a result. Even though the boy knew it was the leader's poor decision, he dared not speak up, fearing even worse consequences. On the day Shiro and the others returned to Akihabara, the boy encountered Shiro again. Yet, after all that had happened, everything had changed. Noticing his predicament, would Shiro intervene? What exactly did this man request that left the two women utterly shocked? A day earlier, to express gratitude for Shiro rescuing Sarara, Marie threw a small party in his honor. Under Nyanta's guidance, an endless array of delicacies was served. At the sight of such a feast, Marie's best friend quickly pulled her aside, warning her to keep the food a secret. Otherwise, the ensuing uproar would rival World War V. After eating their fill, everyone simply slept on the floor. But Shiro went to Marie's room, wanting to inquire about Akihabara's security situation. Marie explained that while public safety had improved, certain guilds had rapidly expanded during this time, leading to severe class stratification. Among the top-ranked guilds were the 3D Guild, which specialized in conquering the highest-level dungeons and had over 1,500 members, and the Black Sword Knights, composed of elite players. These large guilds directly influenced the city's atmosphere and rules, such as claiming priority market rights and monopolizing the best hunting grounds. To counter this, several mid-sized guilds held brief meetings, but human selfishness doomed the alliance to failure. More importantly, with Elder Tale's new expansion raising the level cap to 100, players were eager to reach the pinnacle. Double EXP potions became highly sought after, yet these were only distributed to low-level players. Recently, a guild called Hamelin emerged, exploiting newcomers by forcibly seizing potions and reselling them at exorbitant prices. Hearing this, Shiro realized the city was sick, but his individual strength alone couldn't change the situation. Just as he felt lost about the path ahead, Nyanta's voice reached him. As longtime teammates, Nyanta immediately recognized Shiro's confusion. Through Nyanta's earnest guidance, Shiro began to see the true nature of a guild. It was a home shared by companions. Although most guilds had now descended into darkness, this didn't negate the existence of those who had been silently contributing, or the cohesive guilds they built. After solidifying his resolve, Shiro promptly contacted his apprentice in Hamelin, promising to rescue her. The next day, looking at Naotsugu and Akatsuki, Shiro realized there were also people silently supporting him from behind, waiting for his answer. Shiro then approached Marie again and directly addressed the purpose of their meeting. He wanted to change the city, but needed some financial support from Marie. However, when Shiro mentioned needing 5 million, Marie was stunned. Her guild's account only had a few thousand left. Even if she sold everything, she couldn't scrape together 5 million. Only then did Marie realize Shiro had founded his own guild, and she asked for its name.
名前は Log Horizon.
Ever since Shiro founded Log Horizon, he set a small goal: to earn 5 million gold first. Under Shiro's arrangement, Naotsugu led a team to the boar hunting grounds, tasked with the hellishly difficult mission of capturing the boars alive. If they accidentally killed a boar, they would only receive a small item as a reward. Otherwise, the chefs could utilize every part of the boar without waste. Meanwhile, the girls dressed in maid outfits, and Nyanta conducted emergency training for the chefs. Everyone was full of motivation, except Marie, who was completely exhausted. Yet all of this was triggered by Shiro's plan to earn millions. After failing to borrow money, he came up with the idea of opening a restaurant. Aida, who held a master's degree in economics and reality, quickly concluded that selling flavorful food in this other world could indeed earn them 5 million gold. Before launching the operation, the group still needed to prepare essential accounting books, and this arduous task fell to Marie. After several sleepless nights, Marie couldn't help but beg Aida for mercy, but Shiro was long immune to such pleas. Under the pressure of the two scheming, bespectacled individuals, Marie had no room for resistance. Just then, the hunting party returned with abundant spoils. Hearing the commotion, Marie immediately rushed to Naotsugu and gave him an enthusiastic hug. That night, Marie continued to work hard, and Naotsugu came to comfort her with sandwiches made by Nyanta. As the aroma of the sandwiches wafted over, Marie finally regained her senses. Witnessing Naotsugu's warm-hearted behavior, Marie felt a flicker of unfamiliar emotion stirring in her heart. The next day, the group set up a hamburger stall on the street. Although the servers were extremely enthusiastic, and the hamburgers looked, smelled, and tasted perfect, no one was willing to buy them. According to the rules of this world, no matter how delicious food might seem, it had no actual flavor. After the enthusiastic promotion by the young lady, they finally welcomed their first customer. As the first hamburger was eaten, its indescribable deliciousness became apparent. The next moment, players instantly crowded the stall until it was packed. The stall's reputation spread throughout Akihabara in an instant. The entire otherworld survival theme suddenly changed. Everyone began fighting for food. That evening, Shiro invited his former teammate Sojiro out. Because of Sojiro's unique charm with the opposite sex, Shiro asked him to work as the front desk for the hamburger stall. The already booming business now reached new heights. The first step in changing the world was successfully completed, and the real plan was about to be set in motion. Shiro obtained 4.5 million in startup capital by selling the hamburger recipe, and the next move became the most crucial step in Shiro's plan to reform the city. Since the meeting was initiated by the legendary conductor, all major guilds took it very seriously. One after another, large guilds arrived, and Shiro was slightly surprised to see the conference hall completely packed. Shiro got straight to the point. He wanted to improve the atmosphere of Akihabara. However, the moment he finished speaking, William, the leader of the Silver Sword Guild, immediately opposed the idea. The Silver Sword Guild was purely a combat guild, and to him, the guild building was merely a bank-like facility. As for the city's atmosphere, he couldn't care less. Unfazed, Shiro continued presenting his views. In this city, almost no actions were considered illegal, leading many players to freely commit heinous acts. Moreover, the absence of any self-governing organization allowed such behavior to grow increasingly rampant. He proposed creating a round-table organization to manage the city's legal system. However, the 3D Guild pointed out that the Round Table had many flaws. This was a world of survival of the fittest, and if they encountered guilds that refused to comply, it could lead to large-scale wars, ultimately contradicting the original purpose of establishing the Round Table. Even though most voices in the room were opposed, Shiro remained calm and composed, because 4 hours earlier, he had already purchased the entire guild building. For those stubborn guilds, Shiro could resort to forceful measures, directly expelling them from Akihabara. Additionally, the guild building served as the bank for all players, and now, with just a thought from Shiro, any player in the city could be denied access to the bank. This was his trump card in the negotiation. After seeing Shiro's leverage, the attendees began to change their attitudes. At the same time, Shiro arranged for something even more important: the rescue of Hamelin's novice players. For this operation, he had already communicated with his apprentice beforehand and assigned Akatsugi to provide support at the entrance. Naotsugu also guarded the respawn point. However, during the escape, the apprentice was discovered by Hamelin's higher-ups. Fortunately, her younger brother risked his life to cover for them. The moment the two managed to escape, the guild's gates were forcibly shut, trapping all of Hamelin's higher-ups inside the guild building. Shiro had long intended to use them to establish his authority. After rescuing all the novice players, Shiro directly stripped Hamelin of its guild privileges and expelled them from Akihabara. With the rescue plan successfully completed, Shiro held a city-wide meeting. After his various persuasive efforts, everyone finally realized the necessity of establishing a Round Table Council. Then Shiro pointed out several fundamental policies of the Round Table. First and foremost was improving the city's atmosphere. The streets now looked utterly lifeless. To change this situation, he had already publicly shared the secrets of cooking food. Just as several combat guilds were exchanging puzzled glances, Michitaka, the leader of the production guild, announced that through the joint efforts of their guilds, they had successfully developed a steam engine that originally did not exist in this other world. Upon hearing this, everyone realized this was no longer a game world, but a genuine real world. As long as players possessed sufficiently high-level skills, they could create all kinds of new tools. This was a crucial symbol of a civilization's development. Moreover, as more tools were invented, the market economy would steadily grow, and major production guilds would gain more opportunities, thereby transforming the city's atmosphere. Seeing this, the major production guilds began to voice their support for establishing the Round Table Council. Next, Shiro proposed the second policy, the allocation of wild hunting zones. He wanted to prohibit PK against low-level players, as at their current levels, it would amount to one-sided slaughter. Noticing that everyone's attention remained focused on the meeting, Shiro presented his final point. Since arriving in this other world, from the NPC's perspective, they were the original inhabitants of this world. It was only through their diligent work that the world's basic functions operated normally. If NPCs were endlessly exploited, it could very likely lead to war between players and NPCs. Therefore, Shiro believed NPCs should be treated equally. With this, the Round Table Council was officially established, and the vitality of Akihabara gradually began to revive. Shiro then made another grand gesture, purchasing an entire building to serve as the Round Table Council's headquarters. Karasen from the Production Guild proposed the idea of hiring NPCs, which could further reduce costs. However, Shiro had a vague feeling that some NPCs were secretly observing everything. Just then, Marie arrived with gifts to greet them. To their astonishment, the building, which had been in a shabby style just 2 days earlier, now looked as good as new. Upon inquiry, they learned that Michitaka from the Production Guild had stepped in to help. Everything was starting to improve. However, the current trade system had many flaws, with the first being the difficulty in calculating labor costs, making it impossible to set reasonable prices. At the same time, Nayanta encountered Shiro's apprentices, who wanted to join Log Horizon but felt insecure due to their low levels. Yet, upon learning of their intentions, Shiro decisively welcomed them. A man stayed up for over 40 consecutive nights just to utilize his production skills in this other world and create various tools that originally did not exist in this world. Just as he was about to die from exhaustion, Marie pulled Shiro back to reality. It turned out Marie wanted to take everyone to the beach during summer, but Aita was unhappy about it. Marie was one of the representatives of the Round Table Council. How could she just focus on playing all day? Seeing Marie's dejected expression, Shiro immediately came up with a win-win solution. Gather players below level 40-inch the city and lead them to the beach for training in the name of the Round Table. This would not only help novices level up quickly but also allow Marie to visit the beach. The next day, as everyone prepared to head to the training site, a group dressed like outsiders caught their attention. After the leader introduced them, Shiro learned they were an NPC organization formed by the region, and they had come hoping to gain adventurers' support in the future. They then extended an invitation to the Round Table Council for a royal ball. Krusty from the 3D Guild was extremely anxious, fearing it might trigger a large-scale war between the two sides. However, based on Shiro's analysis, NPCs would not actively provoke players, and in terms of both level and combat power, NPCs were far from being a match for the players. Later, the Round Table Council discussed the ball, but everyone stubbornly refused to attend for various reasons. After multiple discussions, Shiro was ultimately chosen as the attendee, and he also dragged Krusty and Michitaka along with him. The group went to the event together. Sometime later, Marie led the novices to the training site, and after brief adjustments, the training plan was about to begin. Meanwhile, after over a month of arduous travel, Shiro finally arrived at the royal palace. The group was received by Kevin, the secretary of the opposing alliance. Unlike Shiro and his companion's awkwardness, Krusty possessed an extremely high level of social sophistication and effortlessly handled various business-related flattery questions. At this moment, the observant Shiro began to notice that the surrounding NPCs seemed to harbor considerable hostility. It appeared this ball trip wouldn't be as simple as expected. At the same time, Marie finally fulfilled her small wish of going to the beach with everyone. However, this seemingly peaceful scene might just be the calm before the storm. In the world of Elder Tale, most dungeons are occupied by low-level monsters, while some high-level dungeons contain powerful monsters with high intelligence. Therefore, conquering dungeons requires a high level of teamwork, and this training camp is specifically designed to address this. Based on different classes, novice players are divided into several groups, and each group must hold a strategy meeting before tackling a dungeon. Shiro's 2 apprentices were placed in the same group. During the initial self-introductions, the warlock Kode appeared confident and even complained about Minori's low level, though he himself was only level 23. Later, the group prepared for the strategy meeting, but before Minori could finalize the formation, the 2 main damage dealers rushed into the dungeon. As newcomers around level 20, they had no understanding of formations, and the low defense mage even took the lead. Riding on their high morale, Minori's team started off smoothly, defeating several skeleton monsters in a row. Cody began to grow arrogant, constantly using skills to provoke the monsters, which eventually drew too much aggro and completely disrupted the team's formation. The healers at the back couldn't reach the warriors, and just as they were about to be overwhelmed by the skeletons, something extremely awkward happened on Shiro's side. The nation's Secretary General actually asked the representatives of the Round Table to dance, which nearly terrified Shiro, who quickly declined the invitation. However, Krusty immediately agreed, leaving Shiro no choice but to reluctantly step forward. At that moment, Ida stood up and stopped Shiro. It turned out her main class was Bard. In this world, as long as one's dance partner is a Bard, the system automatically triggers dance steps. To the beautiful melody, Aida led Shiro in dancing a moving poetic performance. The next day, while everyone was enjoying the local delicious breakfast, Shiro made a suggestion. According to the intelligence from the Secretary General yesterday, this ball would last at least half a month, and afterward, lords from various regions would also attend. He believed the lords would later try to win over the Round Table Council to gain the adventurers' support. There was also an extremely important point. Since crossing over to this other world, players had basically stopped accepting NPC commissions, and those under the royal title wouldn't request help from players either. Therefore, during the upcoming ball, they would surely try to bribe the players with certain conditions. Shiro hoped to request additional support from the headquarters and instructed Akatsuki to monitor the lords throughout the entire process. This is a game world without death. When a player's HP reaches 0, they will revive at the starting shrine. However, since being transported to this world, players have discovered that each revival also causes them to lose a portion of their memories. Through research by some scholars, it was found that this other world follows a concept of soul and body. A player's MP is designated as the soul, while HP represents the body. At the moment an adventurer is slain, the soul and body separate before reuniting at the starting shrine, with a reduction in experience points serving as the death penalty. But after the catastrophe, when players merged with their in-game avatars upon arriving in this world, reviving not only resulted in lost experience, but also caused real-world memories to degrade during soul reconstruction. To investigate this issue, Shiro visited the scholar's study, where the two engaged in a profound soul-to-soul discussion. Since players became trapped in this other world, the native NPCs, known as the people of the land, have undergone significant changes. In the long history of Elder Tale, there have been 3 world-class strategic magics, and scholars strongly suspect that their entrapment in another world was most likely caused by the 3rd world-class magic. Upon hearing this information, Shiro became highly alert. The scholar then explained that the 1st world-class magic was initiated by Luke Inje, who released a magic that shook the entire world to prevent their people from further oppression, giving rise to the demi-human races, with the goblin tribe being the most representative. Over the following decades, the goblin tribe, as the leader of the demi-humans, launched large-scale wars against the people of the land multiple times. Leveraging their ability to resurrect, the demi-human races directly employed human wave tactics, repeatedly inciting wars, which resulted in a sharp decline in the native NPC population. To quell the conflict, the people of the land used a long-forbidden magic to create an extremely powerful species, but they couldn't withstand the sheer number of goblins and still couldn't reverse the tide of battle. Ultimately, the people of the land, driven to desperation, unleashed the second world-class magic, and it was at that time that adventurers began to appear. Therefore, Shiro had strong reason to suspect that the release of the second world-class magic coincided with the launch of Elder Tale, and he began to suspect that this might all be part of a grand conspiracy. The next day, the group exchanged intelligence as usual, but Shiro chose to conceal the secret about death. If word got out that death would cause memory loss, it could cause turmoil throughout Akihabara and even the entire world. Meanwhile, the rookies' training camp was nearing its end. During this period, Minori's team had been defeated by skeleton monsters 100 times, yet they still couldn't clear the dungeon. To find a fundamental solution, she decided to temporarily stop entering the dungeon until she fully understood her teammates. Minori held another meeting, where each member gave an extremely detailed self-introduction to ensure mutual understanding, including their class playstyles and skill characteristics. These seemingly minor details were actually the key to determining the team's potential. Afterward, the group prepared to challenge the labyrinth again. Following the prearranged battle formation, the samurai stood at the front line, using skills to draw the monster's aggro, while the others stayed behind. After prolonged training under Shiro, Minori took on the role of intelligence monitor in the team, a position requiring constant attention to everyone's status, memorizing each member's HP and skill cooldowns while maintaining peripheral vigilance. The samurai then activated Challenge Domain, successfully controlling all the monsters, allowing the rear line to unleash a combined skill. The amplified attack magic instantly annihilated all the skeletons. Through their united efforts, they finally achieved their first victory. Meanwhile, Shiro continued his research day and night, striving to create a map-like tool through his scribe subclass. However, during the development process, he fell into confusion, unable to comprehend the meaning behind his research or the purpose of his relentless efforts. Just then, Minori's remote communication came through, bringing news of her successful dungeon conquest to Shiro. Moreover, under Shiro's guidance, their team's cohesion had grown stronger. Unbeknownst to her, these few words completely enlightened Shiro. He began to realize the value of his current endeavors. In this world, there were many hopeful players like Minori, and this hope was enough to propel Shiro forward. That night, Isuzu, who had been playing her instrument, suddenly set it down and sent Cody a friend request. Yet, no matter how many times she tried, the system seemed frozen, preventing her from adding Code as a friend. Could he be hiding some unknown secret? This monster that looks like a pig is actually the Goblin King. Under the king's leadership, countless demi-human races began to attack humans. Tens of thousands of fishmen came ashore and launched assaults against the players. Fortunately, the elite members of the guild arrived in time to buy the rookies time to retreat. On the other side, Shiro also sensed that something was wrong. All the high-ranking members hurriedly rushed to the meeting room. Upon inquiry, they learned that the demi-human races led by goblins had started attacking the territories of the people of the land. At the same time, Nyanta, who was on his way to provide support, discovered an enormous goblin army. To prevent disaster, Nyanta immediately relayed the intelligence to Shiro. Subsequently, Shiro organized a remote roundtable meeting. According to the intelligence from the front lines, a large number of fishmen had landed along the coastline, and a demi-human army numbering in the tens of thousands had been spotted in the northern forest. Based on past gaming experience, the timing of this demi-human uprising coincided with the Goblin King's activity. This was originally a limited-time event in the game that occurred every few years. However, ever since they were transported to this world, everyone's minds had been preoccupied solely with survival. Not only had they failed to defeat the Goblin King within the allotted time, but they hadn't even managed to subdue ordinary goblins. As a result, the demi-human races had multiplied at 10 times their normal rate. While this wasn't enough to threaten the players in Akihabara, according to Shiro's assessment, if these goblins launched an attack, the people of the land would surely suffer heavy casualties. Moreover, the people of the land's guardian deity, the Knights of Izumo, had long since disappeared. After some deliberation, Shiro had no choice but to entrust Sojiro with the task of protection. At that moment, another voice spoke up. Krusty, the representative of the combat guild, argued for taking the initiative to attack. Seeing this, Shiro was forced to reveal the secret that death would result in memory loss. Surprisingly, Krusty didn't seem particularly shocked. It turned out that when he first found himself trapped in this other world, in his desperation to quickly grasp its rules, he had descended into madness, fighting monsters day and night. He had died numerous times, and through this, he realized he could no longer even remember the name of his pet from the real world. While the group was still discussing this, Naotsugu successfully reunited with Marie. The party noticed a massive glow of flames in the distance, likely from the vanguard of the demi-human army. Judging by their direction, they seemed intent on capturing the nearest village to use as a food storehouse. In a rush to prevent the goblin attack, everyone hurried toward the village, only to arrive too late. What met their eyes was a ruin streaked with flames. As they took in the devastated village before them, Minori conceived a bold idea. Meanwhile, Shiro was still weighing whether to send troops to support the royal family, unaware that the royals had already been arguing in the meeting. They wanted the adventurers to send military aid while also treating them as free labor. However, the princess had long known the intentions of the higher-ups. The guardian deity of the people of the land had already vanished without a trace. To minimize losses as much as possible, they planned to abandon some territories to fight the goblins. Upon hearing this, the princess instantly grasped the severity of the situation and immediately sought out Shiro. Yet Krusty didn't want her involved. Nevertheless, the princess demonstrated extraordinary resolve. As a member of the royal family, the burden on her shoulders was immense. Soon after, the group was summoned to the meeting room. However, during the talks, the royals kept avoiding the crucial points of the battle, unwilling to discuss the key issues. Shiro had no choice but to cut straight to the chase and ask about the Knights of Izumo. Instantly, the noisy chatter in the meeting room ceased. The nobles cornered and desperate lashed out, arguing that since players possessed immortality, the adventurers should take the initiative to send military aid. It was their duty. Seeing their aggressive stance, Michitaka punched the table, splitting it in two. Just as the two sides were locked in a stalemate, the princess suddenly entered and expressed her desire to follow Krusty back to Akihabara, intending to recruit a volunteer army through personal means and serve as a bridge between the people of the land and the adventurers. After these words were spoken, the nobles were overcome with deep shame. Yet when the princess revealed that the guardian deity had disappeared, they instantly erupted into a furious uproar, as if their tails had been stepped on. In the princess's heart, the world was fair. She wanted the players to send troops to defeat the goblins. They must show the proper courtesy. Seeing the princess's unwavering resolve, Krusty had no choice but to agree to her request. This was also the outcome Shiro had most hoped for. In truth, relying solely on the round table meetings, he lacked the confidence to influence all of Akihabara. Only by the princess stepping forward could the deadlock truly be broken. Under Shiro's introduction, the princess became acquainted with the players from the largest production guild in the area. Given the scale of this war, it was estimated that a massive amount of combat supplies would be required. Timely replenishment of frontline resources was an essential condition for victory. Subsequently, the princess changed into a pure white battle outfit, preparing to deliver a passionate speech that evening. At Shiro's summons, most of the players in the city gathered in front of the stage. Shiro's voice carried a heavy, oppressive force, effortlessly capturing everyone's emotions. The current situation was extremely dire. Faced with such a vast demi-human army, no one could remain uninvolved. Then it was the princess's turn to appear. Under the dazzling spotlight, she trembled as she stepped forward. A princess who had lived in luxury since childhood now had to cast aside her pride to seek aid. The princess's deeply moving speech touched all the players present, and as a result, the subjugation army gained 1,200 capable warriors. The next day, even after a night of contemplation, Shiro couldn't predict the goblins' next move. To avoid being forced into a passive position, they had to adopt swift tactics. At this critical moment, the steamship invented by the players played a decisive role. Shiro tasked Krusty with leading a group of high-level players to the battlefield at full speed, while he remained in the rear to establish a fully operational command headquarters. Meanwhile, The high-ranking members of the royal family planned to invite Michitaka for talks. Due to the princess's recent transgression, the alliance of the people of the land was likely to collapse. To swiftly take control of the overall situation, the king hoped to sign a series of agreements with the Round Table Conference, treating the Round Table as an allied nation, with the princess serving as a bridge for communication between the two sides. The scene shifted as the sound of a steam whistle pierced the sky, and the steamship led the large force to set sail smoothly. As the strongest combat player in the entire server, Krusty formulated the objectives for this operation. This is the most intense episode of Log Horizon. Facing a goblin army as vast as mountains and seas, Krusty wields a battle axe, standing alone against 10,000 foes. Even tens of thousands of monsters cannot overshadow the presence of the strongest player on the server. At this moment, the opposing goblin army grows even fiercer, surging forward like a raging tide. Yet the players holding the front lines remain unshaken, using various magical attacks to annihilate every charging goblin. Just then, two towering figures appear, the demi-human race's siege weapons. Krusty immediately shifts his attack target. Under the player's concentrated fire, one of the giants vanishes instantly. The other giant's attack is deftly dodged by Krusty, who counters with a single swing of his axe, ending its life. While Krusty dominates the battlefield, Shiro establishes a command headquarters in the rear, creating a complete intelligence communication system through cipher encryption to relay frontline updates in real time. Though the situation seems favorable, with Krusty's forces successfully forming an encirclement, Shiro remains deeply concerned about the town in the rear. If the rear defenses are breached, the balance of the entire battle will collapse instantly. Meanwhile, along the town's coastline, an eerie blue glow emerges from the depths of the sea. Minori preliminarily judges this to be the second wave of Murloc attacks, potentially numbering in the thousands. After delivering this intelligence to the command headquarters, Shiro grows anxious and immediately orders the steamship to operate at full throttle. Unsurprisingly, Marie resolves to defend the town to the death. After their summer training, their combat capabilities have undergone a qualitative leap, and their teamwork has become remarkably seamless. All of this stems from Shiro's direct disciple, Minori, whose tactics and thinking follow in Shiro's footsteps. While acting as the commander in group battles, she meticulously tracks each member's skill usage. Through proper coordination, they can defeat their enemies at the lowest cost. Just as they were about to end the battle, torrential rain began to pour from the sky, followed by the appearance of two wolf kings, whose levels far surpassed those of the group. Faced with the immense level gap, the advantage Minori had previously established vanished instantly, and the entire team's formation was easily broken. Tuya's HP began to drop rapidly, and even with the entire team focusing their healing on him, the inevitable defeat could not be reversed. In 10 seconds, Tuya's HP would be depleted, and they were powerless to stop it. At that moment, Code rushed forward, directly pulling Tuya from the Wolf King's jaws, then sacrificed his own life to unleash the most dazzling magic, perishing together with the Wolf King. By the time the group reached Kode's side, he was already on the verge of death. Despite repeatedly casting revival magic, Kode showed no response. It was then that Isuzu revealed Code's secret. He was a person of the land, making revival magic ineffective on him. Just as the group was on the brink of despair, Minori dialed Shiro's phone. This is the episode where Shiro ascends to godhood. Looking at the dying person of the land, Kode, Shiro used forbidden tier magic to break the laws of the entire alternate world, forcibly pulling Kode back from the hands of death and turning him into an immortal adventurer. Just moments ago, the helpless Minori called Shiro on the phone, desperately pleading for his help. After learning the full story, Shiro immediately dropped everything and flew to the town at the fastest speed he had ever achieved in his life. Then Minori reported the specific situation. The moment Kode suffered a fatal injury, they had cast revival magic multiple times. Although Kode's pulse began to strengthen, there were no signs of him regaining consciousness. In this alternate world, there are two spiritual forces that drive players: the soul as MP and the body as HP. When a player is near death, the soul separates from the body. When the physical form completely dissipates, the spirit loses its dwelling place. And this is the stage at which the people of the land die. This is an inherent law. For adventurers, their souls and bodies reconnect at the resurrection shrine. To save Kode, It would require casting magic that could alter the very laws of the world. By the time Shiro arrived at Minori's side, Kode had already lost all vital signs. Considering the upcoming magic would cause upheaval, Shiro first made everyone swear to keep it a secret, then cast the enchanter's unique skill, Mana Siphon, absorbing the entire party's MP and redirecting it to a fixed target. A player's consciousness resides in their soul, so the first step to revive Kode was to restore his MP. The second step was to establish a new connection between soul and body. Shiro pulled out an incense burner from his backpack, a rare in-game item capable of temporarily reviving any deceased creature as a zombie. Using this, he could forcibly reconnect the soul and body. As soon as he finished speaking, Kode slowly opened his eyes. Shiro breathed a sigh of relief, proving the scholar's theory was feasible. Next, he produced a prepared contract, a type of magic that didn't exist in Elder Tale, similar in principle to cooking or crafting tools. Handmade items in this world could create new things. Leveraging his max-level scribe subclass and top-tier materials, he crafted this contract. Once both parties signed it, Kode would become affiliated with Log Horizon, gaining access to guild resources and adventurer status. Though Shiro didn't know the consequences of using this magic, it was the only way to break the deadlock. As the pen traced over the name, a blinding light enveloped Kode's entire body and a golden pillar shot through the clouds. Meanwhile, Krusty led his troops to the Goblin King's lair, and the great battle between the two sides was on the verge of breaking out. Countless spells bombarded the monsters, and Krusty even summoned a level 86 Phoenix. The next second, raging flames swept through the entire ravine, and the Goblin King entered a frenzied state, which was exactly what Krusty wanted. Gripping his axe, he leaped into the air, revealing the true fangs of the strongest player in the entire server. The siege by monsters finally came to an end. Everyone showed joy of surviving the disaster. In the Cathedral of Resurrection, Kode slowly opened his eyes. He had now become a true adventurer. Just as the two were embracing and shedding tears, real danger was quietly approaching. To repay these adventurers who risked their lives to help, the royal family held a grand ball to celebrate. However, many felt it was too early to rejoice because not all goblins had been eliminated yet, and there was always the risk of another siege. Little did they know this was all part of Shiro's plan. Over the past period, the Allied Nations and the Round Table Conference had signed a series of agreements, issuing numerous subjugation quests in the name of the people of the land to adventurers in Akihabara. This not only earned them favors but also increased adventurer activity. Yet the protagonist of this victory celebration was mysteriously absent. At this moment, Shiro and Akatsuki were alone in a room. Looking at the girl full of thoughts before him, Shiro remained utterly oblivious to her feelings, directly leaving the girl behind to go work overtime. Just as Shiro was about to head to the scholar's room, the sound of storytelling in the corridor caught his attention. The story mainly revolved around this war, but the more Shiro listened, the more shocked he became. The creation of new magic to resurrect the people of the land, including some resurrection details, the woman knew everything clearly. Just what was her identity? Then Shiro entered the study. As soon as he stepped inside, the scholar came to congratulate him. About a week earlier, he had sensed the aura of world-class magic surging in the east. He presumed Shiro had created new magic. However, the same aura was also detected in the west, meaning someone other than Shiro had also developed new magic. According to the scholar's deduction, this magic affected the teleportation gates between cities and was highly likely related to the legendary Luke Inje. After a brief exchange, Shiro decided to observe the ball discreetly. Meanwhile, Akatsuki beside him seemed preoccupied. Shiro pulled her aside and gently inquired. The usually reticent Akatsuki finally revealed her thoughts. She felt like just a supporting character who hadn't contributed much in the recent war. Beyond combat, she believed she was holding Shiro back in every other aspect. But Shiro refuted her claim, explaining that having Akatsuki by his side gave him the courage to face challenges. These heartfelt words melted the girl's heart. Seizing the moment, Shiro invited her to dance. She tried to decline by claiming she wasn't skilled, only to be exposed when he mentioned seeing her practice secretly. Blushing, she accepted his invitation. The two began dancing, composing the most dazzling chapter in this alternate world. Unexpectedly, the next day, two young fans actually both wanted to date Shiro. It turned out that to celebrate the successful subjugation of the goblins, Akihabara was about to hold an autumn festival, which was the perfect dating opportunity. Children are the ones who have to choose, while adults naturally take it all. To win Shiro's favor, Minori began rummaging through boxes and racks, racking her brains for the perfect outfit for the next day's date. Isuzu noticed her thoughts and decided to help her pick the best attire. Meanwhile, Akatsuki was questioning her life choices, shocked to find her rival was actually a middle school student. To make matters worse, all her outfits were assassination weapons, with not a single decent piece of clothing. Determined, Akatsuki took matters into her own hands, sneaking into a store alone and demanding to get a proper outfit. On the day of the date, Shiro arrived punctually with the two girls. Surrounded by couples, Shiro openly started a harem right then and there. Even worse, the two girls began taking turns feeding Shiro, making onlookers so jealous they could have torn him apart on the spot. In the end, Shiro ended up stuffed like an otaku. To help him digest, Minori left to buy stomach-soothing tea, and Shiro didn't return to normal until evening. Lying on a chair, he pondered how to interact with his guild members. Unexpectedly, Akatsuki secretly followed him and, taking advantage of the empty surroundings, began stroking Shiro's head. Unfortunately, this intimate scene was witnessed by Minori, who couldn't believe her eyes and ran away in tears, unwilling to accept that the person she liked was being taken away. Just then, Tuya happened to pass by, and seeing his sister so distraught, offered her counseling. After their talk, Minori came to terms with it. After all, she was still young and had plenty of chances to pursue Shiro. The next day, Akatsuki made a bold move by deliberately wearing a new hair accessory, hoping Shiro would praise her. However, Shiro was so engrossed in his work that he didn't even glance at her, which infuriated Akatsuki and drove her away. Meanwhile, Minori trained even harder, choosing the same subclass as Shiro as an apprentice and diligently working on transcribing statistical records for the event venue. With so many people attending the festival, this was a great training opportunity for Minori. Yet, the lively atmosphere wasn't entirely positive, as troublemaking NPCs soon appeared. A noble NPC caused a scene in the tavern, spewing vulgar language that upset everyone. Just as a fight was about to break out, Nayanta stepped in just in time to prevent the conflict. Elsewhere, Shiro, who was out shopping, encountered trouble when a Western NPC started picking a fight in a clothing store. Shiro tried to mediate, but the NPC suddenly threw a punch at him. Shiro responded by unleashing an intense killing intent, successfully scaring the NPC away. However, the people of the land around them began provoking disputes. Shiro suspected someone was deliberately orchestrating these incidents to sabotage Akihabara. He attempted to find clues in these conflicts but discovered the perpetrators had no concrete plan. They were simply causing chaos aimlessly, acting completely unpredictably. Even Shiro was left at a loss this time. Although he knew the opponent's intentions, he had no way to counter them. Just as Shiro was struggling with how to deal with these unreasonable enemies, he ran into Sojiro and the group of fangirls following him. This gave Shiro an idea. He decided to use his female fans to pull off a big stunt. He was going to fight magic with magic. Soon, this cunning plan took effect, and conflict incidents rapidly decreased. It turned out Shiro had employed a honey trap, having his fangirls patrol everywhere. With these lovely fangirls around, even the people of the land NPCs felt too embarrassed to cause trouble. Meanwhile, the princess was hosting a banquet when the Western NPC merchant Malvis showed up uninvited and demanded a personal audience with her. As soon as he spoke, he began making sarcastic remarks, first mocking the city as trash, then sneering at the nobles for attending the same banquet as commoners. The princess knew he was trouble but was too intimidated to retort. The pervert then grew bolder, not only making the princess pour wine for him, but also secretly sniffing her hair, which nearly provoked the surrounding guests to violence. The princess tried to defuse the situation, but Malv suddenly claimed he had brought 500 tons of seafood tribute and needed massive storage space. Just as the princess was about to arrange it, Malvis declared he had already submitted a prior request, yet it hadn't been processed. He then openly ridiculed the princess, leaving her speechless. At this critical moment, Shiro arrived at the banquet and immediately saw through the scheme. Malvs was using trade as a pretext to sabotage the celebration. Accompanying Shiro were the Oceanic Guild's leader and Krusty, instantly bolstering the princess's confidence. Shiro declared this was all the princess's fault, inciting public discontent. Then, Krusty stepped forward with a forged application letter, claiming the Round Table had only just received the request. Malves was stunned, as he had never sent any application. Still, he insisted on immediate storage. Unexpectedly, while the Round Table's warehouses were full, the Oceanic Guild's storage had more than enough capacity. Panicking, Malves grew flustered, prompting Krusty to question the authenticity of his seafood cargo. With his lie exposed, Malves had no choice but to flee in disgrace. After resolving the matter, they formally invited the princess to the evening party. Meanwhile, Shiro went backstage and calmly ate noodles, as he had taken on the role of the villain, making it inappropriate for him to approach the princess again. Minori, however, was deeply puzzled. Why would he deliberately make people dislike him? Shiro casually replied that achieving the goal was all that mattered, only to be sternly scolded by Minori. This made Shiro realize that he had always been helping his companions without considering himself, and he promised Minori that he would start valuing himself more from now on. Unexpectedly, Akatsuki witnessed this scene and was deeply affected. She had always been by Shiro's side, yet she had completely failed to notice the burdens he carried. Later, Shiro encountered a female NPC who, despite her playful demeanor, had her disguise immediately exposed by him. She turned out to be Nureha, the leader of the Western player faction. After being transported to this world, she had manipulated local NPC nobles, used their wealth to purchase the Resurrection Shrine, and forced all adventurers to join her guild, establishing herself as the region's ruler. Seeing this, Nureha admitted that she had come to Akihabara specifically to recruit Shiro into her guild. Shiro couldn't understand why she was so fixated on him. Nureha explained that she had once been an ordinary high school student whom no one noticed, not even when she played Elder Tale. Only one enchanter had acknowledged her and given her high praise. Shiro suddenly realized this was his own fault. Nureha then tried to persuade Shiro by offering him a way to return to the real world. Compared to the useless burdens in Akihabara, she could provide Shiro with everything he needed. These words did stir some temptation in Shiro, but remembering the companions who had supported him all along, he firmly rejected Nureha. Though she was charming and alluring, Shiro believed he couldn't abandon his friends. Ironically, this only made Nureha desire him even more. With that, the autumn festival peacefully came to an end, but the rift between the two factions in the game had begun to widen. The challenges facing Shiro and his group were only just beginning.